Hello, all. Hey, it is Monday. We are in our superhero battle room. Love our scenery, don't you? So today we have one of our war hero to superheroes interviewing Aldina Hajder. She goes over and was in the Army for 4 years and transformed her life in El Paso. Very impactful with veterans, and we're going to have her come in to tell her war story, go over and tell her how she made that transformation, and share those superhero tactics that you love to hear so you can transform your life from war hero to superhero. All right, so thank you for joining. We'll bring her in now. Do I got you?
Yes. Hi, how are you?
Doing well, doing well. So wanted to welcome you to the show. And as we start always, we want you to tell us your war hero story in the sense of how long you were in the service, what brought you to military service, and when and where did you get out of the service?
So, I came in from Bosnia as a war refugee. That was in early 2000s, shortly after 9/11. And seeing what I saw back home and my firsthand experience with what difference the United States military made, that was kind of always in the back of my mind. However, when I came here to United States, I didn't really have a chance to join because one, I was still a child. So as I got older, it just the idea kept growing and growing and growing until 2005 when I got introduced to a recruiter at a college in San Antonio, Texas. And it was literally within a month, done, gone.
Wow.
So in August 16th of 2005 is actually my first day of military service. After, of course, basic training in AIT, I ended up in Schofield Barracks. There I was attached to different units, including 524 CSSB, 84th Engineers, and then I also did 545th Transportation Company, which was actually one of two units in the entire United States military that has logistics support vessels.
Wow. 3 units in 4 years. That's pretty
Yes.
fast track.
So the downside to that was that I was a cook. So where I was needed, that's where they sent me.
With the 92 Golf, right?
Yes.
Okay, my
Definitely.
wife was going to go into the service for that. So
Okay. There's going to be a lot of changes. But after Hawaii, I ended up here at Fort Bliss. This is where I actually got out of military service. I started school for medical assistant after I got out of the Army. And thankfully, unlike a lot of, unfortunately, our military service members, I was lucky that I did not have that struggle with transition, which I think it had a lot to do with the fact that I was pre-planning rather than dependent on just the Army transition services that they were offering at the time. So I got a job offer with Federal Bureau of Prisons. I worked there. I worked at the VA.
wow.
And in 2015 was when all of this community service snowballed into my life. And that's how it all started.
Wow. So let's talk about that. So you didn't have a hard or a low point getting out of service. What was your specific strategy to avoid that? I mean, so it sounds like you didn't have any marital problems walking out, no financial problems, no job problems, and everything else, no mental health problems. What was your strategy to not hit that hard or low point like a lot of veterans do?
So one, I was married to an active service member, and I think that helped a lot,
Mhm.
being that he understood where our life was leading, even past that point of me being active duty service member. Um, it has a lot to do. I think for everybody, it has a lot to do with a support system. If you lack a good, solid support system, it kind of all falls apart. And I know that sounds rough, but I feel that a lot of times military pushes you out way too quick. They
Mhm.
don't give you the proper amount of, and I'm sure you know it as well. They don't
Oh,
give you
yeah.
a proper amount of time to prepare. However, because I knew that my ETS date was coming in, I I already started taking head steps one by one to
Mhm.
get to where I wanted to be. And i.e. the job with Department of Justice. I was already on USA Jobs looking for jobs. And I think that's what a lot of, especially our younger generation service members struggle with,
Mhm.
is that they fail to take advanced steps. They wait until their ETS date to get into, a job pool, to seek interviews, to look for employers that are veteran friendly.
Mhm.
So I was constantly Googling, looking at different people, networking, asking my friends who have left the military service, hey, what has your experience been? So I kind of took those bits and pieces to use it as a lesson learned, I guess.
No, that's huge because for me, it was like I got back from a deployment. I was told they're like, hey, we're still going to keep you in the service, but we're going to change your MOS because I had an MOS I was in. I was in mental health as an MOS and I was a prior IT guy, so Signal. So I try to speak Army as much as possible. So I was going to go back to Signal, and then the command sergeant major goes over and says, yeah, I want you in here. But then the 2-star civilian equivalent is like, because of this regulation, you can't go back to Signal, but we don't want you in mental health anymore. Hey, we're still going to keep you in the service, but we're going to
Sorry.
Yep, that's where the echo comes from. So from there, for me, it was like I only knew like maybe about 90 days before I was about to go. So I didn't even think about looking for work and running my business. So that sounds like you were set. You were great. You had that year out. You did those wise things. As everybody's listening, hey, get on USA Jobs early if that's your transition point. If you're going to go over and transform into college, make sure you have those ducks in a row and make sure you got your GI Bill stuff straight. Hey, if you're going to go into the corporate sector, start networking on LinkedIn right now. You get a year free on LinkedIn. So people that are listening, if you don't have LinkedIn Premier, go get it. You can get up to a year free on LinkedIn Premier. I didn't access that until like a few years after I got out of the service. So those things right there. So what made you, so you did this great transformation. You didn't have the struggles or anything, but what made you transform from that war hero to superhero? What made you change and say, hey, I'm a cook, now I'm out of service, I have a job and I have a great job, and now you're involved with all these great agencies helping many veterans?
So the catalyst to that was I started interning for a local congressman, Congressional District 16 at the time. And I realized how many issues, because I was interning under the department that did DOD and VA congressional inquiries. I realized how many issues just locally alone our veterans and service members were facing. So that's what pushed me to branch out and seek out other like-minded people to find out what can I do to make a difference. And that's actually how I ran into David Navarez, which is your guest tomorrow. He's one of the veterans here in El Paso locally, and great minds speak alike. He was like, hey, we're trying to form this brand new Veterans Affairs Advisory Committee with the city of El Paso. However, we're getting a lot of blowback. A lot of city representatives, unfortunately, were not for it. They didn't feel like there was a need for it. So I joined with him, a bunch of other really, really amazing people like Bill Sparks, who was actually at the time president of Veterans Business Association here in El Paso. And we kind of pushed and talked, asked the city representatives, what do we need? Because what we were asking for was just the beginning. Small things like giving free bus passes for veterans who are struggling with finding transportation to at least make it to their medical appointments.
Yeah, that's huge because it can take like hours. El Paso is really huge. Texas is like a country, and it takes 3 days to get through there. I remember a story in Atlanta that if you lived 5 miles away, it would take you 3.5 hours to get bus, but it would only take you 20 minutes to drive. It's insane.
Yes, definitely. But at least they still had a chance to make it to those medical appointments at the local VA. There were other things that we were dealing with, like homelessness with veteran community here. So we got involved with the El Paso Homeless Coalition, where we went out actually physically into the community and we did a survey with homeless individuals that we could track down and ask them, are you a veteran? Are you getting services and stuff like that? In the meantime, while all this was going on, there was a county of El Paso Veterans Advisory Board that was also kind of looking to blossom. And their first thing that they actually ended up doing, and I was a chairwoman for that board for a bit, they actually ended up forming a handbook of all the services that could be potentially useful to veterans of El Paso.
Yeah, that's
Um,
huge. That's huge
yeah.
because you don't know where to go. You get out of the service, and like my one of my other war hero superheroes, Chef Ryan Jacobs, he's on our show on Wednesday because he got the most views on social
Hmm.
media. And he's like, he went homeless because you don't know what you don't know. You went from like tons of resources and tons of connections, active duty, to totally out
Yeah.
of the service. Because even me, I transitioned from active to reserve, and now the resources are less, but I still got some resources compared to no resources. And he was living right next to the VA. He was like 3 miles away in his car, living there, and didn't know where to start.
And that's been the biggest downside, that a lot of times there is that breakdown in communication between the federal government services and city and county services. So what we were essentially trying to do is put those together to make sure that if a veteran walks into a county assistance center, the county assistance center is still well aware of what federal services are available to that veteran.
Yeah.
So that was ultimately our goal, is to put together all the resources, whether it be a food pantry, a bill payment assistance, or whatever it may be.
And that's fantastic. So, what two agencies do you help others to go over and to transform as you're transform yourself from war hero to superhero?
So the first organization that I actually felt like I truly helped make a difference was actually Veterans Nonprofit. It is actually here in El Paso, and they're very near and dear to my heart. They started off as a very small organization that was feeding veterans in need, actually out of a small Unitarian church here. And as the CEO, Steve Mills, realized numbers were growing and growing and growing exponentially, they transformed from just, one person operated small little operation lending out church space to a 501c3 nonprofit. And they actually serve currently, the last time I checked, over 400 veterans and families.
Wow.
And that's not just including food. So they have their food service operations where they hand out food on Mondays and Saturdays. They also have peer support group. They offer clothing services for veterans who don't have a suit to go to a job, or if they need personal hygiene stuff, clothing, regular clothing, shoes, socks, whatever they may need. And they also have a pet pantry. So if they have a service animal but they can't afford food, they can come into the Veterans Nonprofit organization and get the food for their pet.
Sounds like a very holistic environment. So you do a one-stop shop in the sense of El Paso specifically.
Yes, yes. And a lot of people are not aware of that organization, even though it's literally outside of Cassidy Gate, maybe a quarter mile away. So it is on Dyer Street, off of Dyer and Cassidy. They're really, really amazing. Like I said, the only struggle that they've been having since this COVID hit is that the local food bank where they usually order food has not been given it to them due to the fact that they're afraid of exposure. So they're struggling for funds right now, and on their website you can actually donate to help them out.
That's really cool. So so do they just do a donation on the website, but they also have like a Facebook page? Do they have that type of thing?
Yes, so you can look them up on Facebook page as Veterans Nonprofit. They have the website, as we can see. And I believe that at this time they have a GoFundMe. I'm not 100% sure. I will have to double check, and I can always share it with you.
Yeah. So if they don't have it already, a lot of people do donations on Facebook. There's a Facebook donation thing if you're in the
Yes.
501c3. So
Yes.
that's what gets more of the donations. So just a recommendation if that ain't set up already.
Yes, it's set up, and also they are part of the FCC. So come November, when federal campaign comes in, they are for the Southwest region, they're actually registered with them. So you can donate that way as well.
That's cool. All right, that's awesome. So that's a couple places our guests can go over and go do that. And listeners, what about the other place that you work with? What is it? Memories of Honor, I think it is called?
Yes. So Memories of Honor, I started working with them about 3 months ago, right at the peak of COVID shutdown. I came across them through one of my friends, and they were looking for a marketing individual to help them out with marketing. So Memories of Honor is actually based out of Tennessee.
Okay.
And they are an organization that primarily focuses on sporting and fitness events to do so we have 3 pillars: honor, heal, and connect. We honor fallen military service members through those events. We, of course, healing is one of the biggest parts, because when you lose somebody that you served with, a family member, a friend, it's definitely a process. So we try to do our best to help through that process. And of course, connect is connecting all of those who are into running, jogging, marching, whatever it may be. And it sticks with us as military service members. That part of us kind of stays with us. And right now, we actually have a virtual baton challenge that we're doing. We have almost 600 participants so far. We started the weekend of Memorial Day. Mm-hmm. And you can actually sign up for that on batonchallenge.com. There's a minimal fee. However, what they do give you is, I'm going to show you really quick.
Awesome.
So each packet kind of gives you a small package, which you'll get from us. And then with each packet that you sign up with, you will get something like this. So okay. This is one of my own that I signed up for. And you can, of course, look up which individual you're honoring, what their story is, what their background is as far as military service. Right now, we're looking at roughly almost 14,000 memorial bibs. However, we're always looking to register more. So if any of our viewers actually know a fallen service member, what happens with these bibs, they will get 2 Gold Star families. And it will kind of give a small story of, hey, this person went out and did a 60-mile ruck march to honor your son, daughter, niece, cousin, uncle. So that's one of the things that we do. We do have 2 events coming up. One is in September. The other one is, I believe, in November, if all goes to plan. They're both going to be in Tennessee. One of them is a 5K and the other one is a ruck.
How long is a ruck march? I've never done one before.
So we're still in the process of planning that particular event, but I believe it's also a 5K. It's just a short one just to honor service members, yes.
Okay, because some of us veterans can't go 60 miles like other ones can. I was thinking to myself,
yeah,
I'm like, I can do 60 miles over time.
Yeah, so the really cool thing about the virtual baton is that you can actually do it at your own pace. So if you want to do a mile a day, and there's no time limit. So if you want to do a mile a day over a 60-day period, as long as you finish it, you get a certificate of completion at the end, a coin, a challenge coin, and then, of course, all the other goodies.
Yeah. So do you guys also do it like this way? I thought about this idea is like if you do like a virtual event, like do it on Facebook, you tag yourself in that time, see if you can tape it live, and then pass on the virtual baton to the next person. Is that how you guys doing it too? Can you do it that way?
No, so we haven't done that. I think that's a really cool idea. So I'll definitely pass it on to our CEO.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking, is to gain traction. It's like, hey, if I do it, and then because we were going to do that on base for veteran suicide and teen suicide. And the thing was like, oh, everybody's doing it on their own. I said, what about a virtual one? Like, hey, you get the people that are on Facebook and say, hey, or whatever social media that's most popular and say, hey, tag me, and then I'll do it from 6 to 7. I'll do an hour. I'll just go live before and after, or if someone could take me during that time. And then
Yeah.
afterwards, you go over and say, hey, so-and-so, you're up next. And then they virtually take over for the next hour. So it'd have to be coordinated. But I mean, theoretically, even if you did it during the duty day or like on a weekend, you could then tag those people and have teams. So if you did like, say, 12 hours, the teams go get all together. They meet virtually at first. They figure out the times, and then they just keep tagging one another and put them in order and say, hey, you're next, you're next, you're next. And as long as you got good coordination, you theoretically, you could go over and do it and gain a lot of traction for the organization at the same time.
Yeah, definitely. That's a really good idea. I haven't thought of it yet. So I appreciate
You can have it. I think of ideas all the time. You can have it.
Sounds good.
Yeah. So that's awesome. So I'd love to go over and hear, like, since you had such a awesome transformational story and no hiccups, what do you share with your veterans and your fellow comrades on tactics, superhero tactics, to go over and to make this transformation easier?
So I think a lot of it has to do with time management. I think that's the most critical part when it comes to transitioning out of active duty service to becoming a veteran. Second, resources. You have to know your resources. I mean, no matter where you end up, you can't just go blind. And as much as it hurts a lot of our veterans, I think we kind of, and I know you understand this saying, we kind of shoot ourselves in the foot because we think that we're these invincible individuals with no need for support. And support is out there. I mean, we're there for each other. That camaraderie exists. And I think it's not a shameful thing to reach out and say, hey, these are the things that I need, because that's what I did. I asked friends, I've talked to peers, I've talked to, my superiors. And as a person, we're far too often afraid of that stigma of being weak. And I think that military kind of instills that into us, because we're supposed to do everything all around on our own, no questions asked. So I would honestly recommend to anybody that's transitioning out of service to connect. Connections. Like you mentioned earlier, LinkedIn, I mean, in technological advancement age that we are in today, that is our best friend.
Yeah, that's huge. Because if I would have did the tactics I'm doing now that I did 7 years ago, first off, this TV show would be a lot huger. It's on television now, but just the almost going homeless would have never happened. I thought, I'm like, okay, I have a brain. I go do this. Hey, if I get these certifications and take my revenue and do my business, because the first time I did it, I did it with churches. Oh yeah, they're gonna love what I do. Going over in combat boots, khaki pants, and a button-down shirt, telling them that their marriage ministry sucks and how much they need help. I wasn't that direct, but it was pretty much that way.
Yeah.
And I crashed and burned. If I would have had that wisdom, those connections, and at least would have took the advice and like, hey, got a part-time job, I wouldn't have went through all the problems I had. So yes, asking for help is key.
Yeah. And I think the third and one of the biggest ones is the fact that we're afraid of venturing out. And that's what I did. It took me a while to realize what I really loved doing without coming home with a headache, if you know what I mean. So I did venture out in different fields after I got out of the military. I worked as a federal correctional officer. I've done administrative work. And now I feel like communications is my forte. I actually ended up getting my master's degree in communications, and I'm happy. I actually enjoy doing it. And I think that's the biggest and the last tactic that I would recommend it to people. Don't be afraid to venture out, but find what you love doing.
No, I totally agree. You got to find your zone. You got to find your dream. You got to find your vision, because your MOS, your AFSC, your rate, whatever you want to call in the service, and even as a first responders, you become a sergeant and officer, that might be just a stepping stone to where you're supposed to be. compared to just going over and just sitting in that MOS. And the thing is that once you leave the service, you're not that MOS, you're not that rate anymore. Now you need to figure out what's your next mission. And sometimes you might be just going from mission to mission to find the ultimate mission that's going to feed into you and to help you thrive. So I totally agree with that.
Yeah, definitely. And I think for a lot of people, it's that fear of the unknown. They're afraid to fail. They're afraid of, well, what if I don't do well? And I had that same fear. I'm not going to lie. When I started my bachelor's degree, I got my bachelor's degree in social psychology, and that was my biggest fear. How can I, as a person, take psychology classes when I have my own issues? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And when I finished my bachelor's degree, even though I did well in school, I realized this is not what I want to do. And
it took me 70 jobs to find out what I wanted to do too. So I totally relate to that.
Yeah. So I think a lot of people, they feel that if they settle and pay is comfortable, but what they're not realizing is that it's not what they love. We've seen it and we've heard it way too many times. You bring work home, you're frustrated, you can't think straight, and that's not a conducive environment for your private life. You have to be able to live happily in both, your professional and your personal life. And if those are clashing, it's not going to go well. So I think as a superhero tactic, you gotta be able to find happiness in both. And if you can, then it's maybe time to do some soul searching.
Definitely. Yeah, that's what we talk about all the time at the War Hero Superheroes. Like, you got to go over and get your bedroom straight first, and then you transition to the living room and get that straight. And then those passions, those things, those connections, then pour into the boardroom. And then as you're pouring out of those two rooms into the boardroom, if your boardroom's sucking wind out of you and you're taking it back home to the living room and the bedroom, eventually things are going to collapse. And yes, you can find another quick boardroom to survive, but you're not going to thrive in the bedroom and the living room. And you're just going to be eventually surviving in the boardroom. You can make $1 million and want to be suicidal. You can go over and make $10 a year and be super excited. Like, one of my most exciting jobs, I go over and done is this. And yes, I make very little right now, but the thing is that I'm passionate about what the people I go over and serve and go over and do and uplift people like you. And I'd rather do that and rather be a dollaraire than to be a billionaire. I want to get to billion, but I mean, if I'm a dollaraire at the end of my life, it's like, hey, I'm still going to be excited for the people I went over and serve.
Yeah. And a lot of people don't realize that, I was that selfish young 20-something-year-old where more money, happiness equals that happiness. And in service, you don't get paid much. I mean, it's literally pennies per dollar, depending on how many hours you work. But my enjoyment in the military wasn't really about the fact that the job I was doing was my job. It was the fact that I got to meet some amazing men and women that I've served with and I'm still friends with. Going back to 2015, that's 15 years ago, I'm still friends with them. So that made that job a little more bearable. And I think, like I said, just being able to understand yourself, to find yourself, to know your nicks and niches, and finding what you truly are passionate about. I think that's what makes the world go around. So for me, it's community. It's my community. It's going out there and helping people and finding people that I know will appreciate it. And it's not about getting a thank you at the end. It's just about the fact that I can go to sleep peacefully, knowing that what I did made a difference.
Yeah, it's that next transformed life, bringing their legacy and bringing their purpose.
Yeah.
That's huge. So I want to thank you for joining the show. I want to thank you for the audience that Joanna Abroad is watching right now, the likes and loves. If you guys have any questions, this is always a dialogue, never a monologue. Just put them in the comments. So questions can be before and after the show. So this is always continuing. whoop, I lost Aldina. I don't know what happened. But as she went over and left, if you guys love this episode and you want to uplift her to the next level, all you have to do is go over and give her 3-second view. That's all you have to do. So if she gets the most views in 72 hours, she'll be uplifted like Chef Brian Jacobs to our War Hero Superhero TV show that's on Amazon, on Roku, on Apple, and all the other platforms. So thank you for going over and joining and watching. Unfortunately, we lost Aldina in the connection, so we hope you guys have a great day. David from the El Paso Veterans group will be on tomorrow. And let me see if I can give you guys a list of our guests for next week real quick. I know Ashley is on Thursday and Richard Kaufman's on Friday. So hope you guys can continue to watch. And again, if you want Aldina to go over and get uplifted to the show, give her the most views in the next 3 days. 3 seconds of your time will go over and give her a view. A quick share will go over and give her a view to go over and do that. If she gets the most views in 3 days, we'll uplift her to the TV show. So this message can get out here on the transformation from War Hero to Superhero. Thank you guys. You all have a great evening. And broadcast.